I'd always wondered why my closest friend insisted on taking charge of my birthday party. Now, as I watched my husband kiss her in front of our friends and family, it all clicked into place. Sophia, my supposed best friend for 20 years, had crafted the ideal setting for my public execution. Before we dive into this saga of betrayal and meticulously planned retribution, thank you for joining me on this journey. If you appreciate tales of empowerment and justice served ice cold, consider subscribing. It's free. Now, let's witness Chloe's masterful comeback. The delicate champagne glass shivered in my fingers as Julian, my husband of 10 years, cleared his throat for what I assumed would be his customary birthday toast to me. The private event space at the Azure Room, my favorite restaurant, was aglow with soft lighting and filled with the faces of our inner circle, all handpicked by Sophia, of course. Before we toast to another year of my wonderful wife's life, Julian started, his voice laced with an unfamiliar sharpness that sent a chill down my spine. I have something important to share. He paused, but his gaze didn't find mine. It slid over to Sophia, who was positioned casually by the antique bar cabinet. Her ruby red lips were curled into a smirk that I now understood as eager anticipation, not friendly support. The entire room seemed to suck in its breath. I felt my mother's hand grip my shoulder from behind, her maternal radar already picking up the signals my heart was refusing to process. The silver dessert fork I'd been nervously tapping against my plate fell with a clatter, the sound piercing the tense quiet. "Chloe," Julian went on, addressing me directly, as if the 30 people surrounding us didn't exist. "You've been an extraordinary part of my journey, but sometimes love reveals itself in the most unexpected ways." His words filled the air like a toxic vapor, choking the life out of every happy memory we had ever shared. That's when Sophia moved. She glided forward, the ruby red dress I had helped her pick out just a month ago shimmering as she came to stand beside him. All the little pieces snapped together in my mind. Her insistence on planning this event, the hushed phone calls that would abruptly end whenever I walked into a room, the private looks they'd been exchanging over dinner. "Julian and I have fallen in love," Sophia declared, her voice carrying the same casual tone she used for sharing office gossip during our weekly lunches. "We never intended for this to happen, but you can't control your heart." Someone audibly gasped, probably my sister Mia, who always leaned toward the dramatic. But it was the sprinkle of uneasy chuckles that followed that truly felt like a knife twisting. These people, our friends, were somehow finding a shred of amusement in my devastation. I saw awkward smiles and hesitant glass raises as Julian continued his speech about new chapters and following one's passion. My father shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. "How dare you?" he began, his voice booming. But I held up a hand, silencing him. This was my humiliation, my stage, and I would direct this scene. I rose to my feet slowly, deliberately smoothing down the navy silk dress I'd chosen for this special night. "Well," I said, my voice surprisingly firm, "I guess this clears up the mystery of all those weekend business emergencies and the new, expensive cologne." The room went dead silent, every eye fixed on me. "And Sophia, my dear," I turned to her, "it certainly explains why you were so adamant I wear navy tonight. How very considerate of you to dress me for my own funeral." Julian had the nerve to look flustered. "Chloe, we never wanted to hurt you." "No," I cut him off, taking a slow, calculated sip of my champagne. "If that were true, perhaps you wouldn't have picked my 38th birthday party for this charming little announcement. But then again," I locked eyes with Sophia, "you always did have a taste for the theatrical, didn't you?" I placed my glass on the table with surgical precision, though every cell in my body was screaming to shatter it against the wall. The sapphire necklace Julian had given me for our 5th anniversary caught the light as I reached for its clasp. With practiced care, I unhooked it and let it drop onto the pristine white linen. "You will regret this," I said, my voice low but absolute in its conviction. It was not a threat, it was a statement of fact. The slight tremble in Sophia's smile, the flash of doubt that crossed Julian's face, told me they'd heard the promise beneath the words. "Chloe," Sophia started, reaching out as if to comfort me. I took a step back, my movement so fluid it made her gesture look clumsy and desperate. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate," I addressed the room, my tone as warm as a blizzard. "Please do enjoy the cake. Sophia spent ages choosing it after all. It would be a crime to let all her careful efforts go to waste." As I walked out of the azure room that night, my head held high and my steps even, I could hear the roar of conversation erupting behind me. Let them gossip. Let them wonder. They had no clue what was about to happen, because while Julian and Sophia had spent months orchestrating their grand betrayal, they'd overlooked one fundamental truth about me. I had always been better at playing the long game. The crisp night air stung my cheeks as I hit the sidewalk, and for the first time that night, I let myself have a real smile. They thought this was the end of my story. They were so very wrong. This was only the beginning. The morning after my birthday disaster, I went dark. Not in a literal sense, but socially, I became a phantom. My phone was a constant buzz of notifications from supposedly concerned friends and family, each ping a sharp reminder of the audience to my public shaming. I ignored them all. Instead of wallowing in self-pity and Chardonnay, I funneled my white-hot fury into a single-minded purpose: research. My laptop became my sole confidant as I began a deep dive into Julian's professional life. As a corporate attorney, I knew precisely where to search for the loose threads that, when pulled, would unravel his entire world. A decade of marriage had given me a PhD in his vanities, his insecurities, and most critically, his deceptions. Sophia's social media account suddenly transformed into a treasure trove of intel. Every flawlessly filtered photo, every tagged check-in, every networked business acquaintance, I archived it all. Her real estate empire, which she'd built on a carefully managed reputation for exclusive connections and flawless discretion, was her source of pride. It seemed only fitting that her pride would be the instrument of her undoing. I leased a Spartan studio apartment on the other side of the city, using my mother's maiden name for the paperwork. The irony of living in a space smaller than my old walk-in closet was not lost on me. But this wasn't a quest for comfort. It was about strategy. In this anonymous box, I could think, I could plot, I could orchestrate, free from the ghosts of my old life. "Chloe, please," my sister Mia pleaded on her third attempt to break through my wall of silence. "You shouldn't be alone right now." I just offered a small smile and gently closed the door. Support was the last thing I needed. Sympathetic looks and empty platitudes would only dull my focus. By day, I was a pillar of professionalism at my law firm. My colleagues tiptoed around me, unsure of what to say, but I gave them nothing to work with. No tears, no angry outbursts, no cracks in the facade, just unwavering competence and a mysterious half-smile that unsettled them far more than any display of emotion ever could. At night, my true work began. I built my arsenal using encrypted emails, secure messaging platforms, and a meticulous system for documenting every piece of data I uncovered. Julian's business associates became my unwitting informants as I, posing as a potential investor, drew out details about his firm's finances. And Sophia's clients, they were surprisingly forthcoming when approached by a researcher interested in her methods. The stories of overlooked structural issues, undisclosed zoning problems, and creative financing began to form a very compelling narrative. Every new piece of information was like a block of granite, carefully chiseled and placed in the foundation of my grand design. I watched from the digital shadows as they paraded their new relationship for the world to see. Julian moved into Sophia's penthouse, the one she'd suspiciously acquired right after her own divorce a few years back. They were photographed at charity galas. Their beaming faces splashed across the city's society blogs. Each public display was a gift, offering me another layer of insight into their daily routines and vulnerabilities. The self-control it required was almost painful. When I overheard my paralegal mention that Sophia had been spotted trying on engagement rings, I held my composure, even as my nails carved deep arcs into my palms. When Julian's family law practice won a landmark case and he was pictured celebrating with Sophia on the cover of the legal journal, I just clipped the article and added it to my growing file. My father, always the would-be protector, tried to reason with me. "Sweetheart, your mother and I are worried sick. You can't just vanish." Oh, but I could, and I had. The woman they thought they knew, the dutiful wife, the loyal friend, the predictable daughter, she'd been executed at that birthday party. In her place stood someone far more formidable, a woman with absolutely nothing left to lose. 1 month after my self-imposed exile, an invitation arrived for a mutual friend's dinner party. Julian and Sophia would be the guests of honor, celebrating their newfound happiness. I sent back a polite refusal, citing a prior engagement. Let them believe I was licking my wounds in shame. Let them think their betrayal had shattered me. In truth, I was spending that evening meeting with a disgruntled former client of Sophia's, a developer whose multi-million-dollar project had collapsed under her expert advice. His story, when combined with the others I had collected, was forming a pattern that I knew a certain investigative journalist would find irresistible. The fact that this particular journalist held a long-standing grudge against Julian's firm was simply a delightful bonus. As I sat in my bare-bones apartment that night, surrounded by financial records and digital footprints, a strange sense of calm washed over me. The initial shock had hardened into something far more useful: resolve. Every ignored text, every declined invitation, every moment of my calculated silence was simply winding the spring tighter. They mistook my silence for surrender. They saw my absence as defeat. But they had forgotten the most basic rule of nature. It's not the thunder that's dangerous, it's the lightning you never see coming. I picked up my phone and for the first time in a month replied to a message. It was a simple text to an old friend from law school who now worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission. Yes, coffee would be great. I have some interesting insights on local real estate practices I'd be happy to share. The board was set. The pieces were in position. It was time to remind them why they should have been afraid of my silence. The coffee meeting with my old friend at the SAEC was the first domino. Within a fortnight, Julian's law firm was notified of a routine regulatory audit. The satisfaction of imagining him scrambling to justify dubious transactions and doctored books was a pleasure I hadn't anticipated. Every morning seemed to bring a new crisis for him to manage, each one sparked by a carefully leaked piece of information I'd provided. Sophia's real estate kingdom began to show cracks, all with surgical precision. Anonymously submitted tips to the city's building inspectors led to a wave of citations for code violations in her most prestigious properties. Suddenly, her luxury condos were in the news, but for unstable foundations and faulty wiring, not for their panoramic views. The quiet rumors I'd seeded about her shady business tactics blossomed into a full-throated chorus of doubt. I orchestrated their downfall like a conductor leading a symphony, with every instrument playing its part at the perfect moment. While Julian was mired in the SEC audit, I made sure his largest clients were alerted to his oversights in their most recent contracts. It was amazing how quickly corporate loyalty dissolved when shareholder value was on the line. The opulent corner office he'd so often boasted about began to feel less like a throne and more like a glass-walled prison. Did you hear about Sophia Monroe's new development? The whispers at the charity functions I now attended alone grew more insistent. Apparently, the investors are pulling out. They say she misrepresented the permits. I would sit at my table, observing the social predators circling their freshly wounded prey. It was deeply ironic that the same people who had snickered at my humiliation were now feasting on theirs. Julian's first major casualty came when the senior partners at his firm convened an emergency meeting. I didn't need a seat at that table to know the outcome. The evidence of his ethical lapses I'd so carefully compiled had found its way into the right hands. His name was scrubbed from the firm's website by the end of the day. Sophia's unraveling was more spectacular. During the grand unveiling of her latest high-rise, a demonstration organized by a group of her angry former clients hijacked the event. The image of her, mascara streaking down her face as news cameras rolled, became the talk of the town. The very photographers who had once documented her triumphs now captured her public disgrace in high definition. "Chloe," my sister Mia called me one evening, her voice a mix of awe and alarm. "Julian looks awful. He's lost so much weight. And Sophia, people are saying she's drinking heavily. What did you do?" "Do?" I responded with practiced innocence. "I've just been focusing on my healing, Mia." "You should ask their own actions what they did." The dominoes kept falling. Julian's younger brother, a junior associate at the same firm, was pressured to publicly condemn his brother's actions to save his own career. Their parents, who had once praised Sophia as Julian's soulmate, now physically crossed the street to avoid running into her. The isolation they had intended for me was now their own suffocating reality. My masterpiece, however, was a meticulously researched exposé in the city's most respected financial journal. It laid out every back-alley deal, every ethical shortcut, and every betrayed client's trust in excruciating detail. My name was nowhere in the article, but anyone who knew the three of us could see my fingerprints all over their ruin. Sophia's real estate license suspension hearing was, by a delightful coincidence, scheduled for the same day Julian had his hearing with the State Bar Association. I attended neither. Instead, I enjoyed a quiet lunch at their old favorite restaurant, sitting alone at what used to be their regular table. The collapse of their professional lives dovetailed perfectly with the implosion of their personal one. Stress has a way of stripping away pretenses, and their true colors were garish. Their public spats became the stuff of local legend. "You promised me you had this handled." Sophia's shriek carried across a packed restaurant one night where they didn't realize I was seated in a booth just around the corner. "Now I'm losing everything because of your incompetence." "Me?" Julian's laugh was bitter and loud. "You were the one who insisted on that birthday party stunt. It'll be so dramatic, you said. She'll have no choice but to accept it." "Well, how's that working out for us?" I took a slow sip of my wine and smiled. They had orchestrated my public humiliation in this very building. Now they couldn't even get through a single meal here without tearing each other apart. Poetic justice was, and always would be, my favorite kind. The final nail in their shared coffin was hammered in by Sophia's former assistant, who, armed with years of her own documented proof, filed a lawsuit for wrongful termination and creating a hostile work environment. The details that came out painted a picture of corruption so deep that even their last few remaining allies couldn't defend them. Julian's attempt to salvage his public image with a television interview was a train wreck. His practiced charisma now read as smarmy and disingenuous, and his attempts to explain his actions sounded like pathetic excuses. The online comments were brutal. Society loves nothing more than a good public flogging. As I watched their world burn to the ground, I felt neither glee nor pity. I simply felt a sense of cosmic balance being restored. They had tried to erase me from their story, but instead I had become the sole author of their tragic ending. The last time I saw them together, they were arguing on the sidewalk outside a cafe they used to frequent. Sophia's designer coat looked rumpled, and Julian's once confident posture had been replaced by a defeated slump. They didn't see me as I watched from my car, but I saw everything. The way they recoiled from each other's touch. The gulf between them that seemed to widen with every resentful word. My phone vibrated. It was a text from my real estate agent. Their penthouse was officially on the market, priced to sell fast. They needed the cash, apparently. I smiled and made a note to have my attorney put in a lowball offer. After all, I had always loved that view. After witnessing their public implosion, I knew it was time to shift my focus entirely to Sophia. Julian's professional life was a smoking crater, but Sophia still clung to a few frayed threads of her social identity. That was about to change. I had reserved my most potent venom specifically for her. On my laptop, an encrypted folder held a decade's worth of her indiscretions, meticulously documented and cross-referenced. Every betrayal, not just against me, but against countless others. Sophia had built her career by using people as rungs on a ladder. The first domino fell within her own charity foundation. An anonymous source led investigators to discover that a mere fraction of the donations was actually reaching the causes they were meant for. The society wives who had once sung her praises recoiled in horror as their own names became linked to her fraudulent enterprise. Did you have any idea? Mrs. Davenport, the foundation's primary benefactor, whispered to me at a gallery opening, "All that money we gave, where did it go?" I just took a sip of my champagne and replied, "Sophia was always very good at managing assets." Her past began to surface in a series of carefully timed waves. Former real estate clients came forward with stories of manipulated contracts. Old acquaintances suddenly recalled instances of jewelry going missing after she'd visited their homes. Each new story was released just as the public buzz from the previous one began to fade. The details of her first marriage were the next to hit the papers. Her ex-husband's unfortunate accident, the suspiciously large insurance payout, the hastily settled divorce, all facts. But when arranged in a certain light, they painted a very dark picture. The police didn't reopen the case, but the court of public opinion delivered its verdict swiftly. Sophia's attempts to salvage her image grew more and more desperate. She threw a lavish gala at her last remaining property, but the guest list was embarrassingly sparse. The few who showed up came only to gossip and chronicle her downfall for their social media followers. "Please," she cornered me in the restroom of an upscale hotel, her designer dress looking more like a costume. "I know you're behind this. What will it take to make you stop? Money? A public apology?" I calmly reapplied my lipstick in the mirror, taking my time before turning to her. "What could you possibly offer me, Sophia?" "I already have everything I want. I'm just ensuring you get everything you deserve." Her social death warrant was signed when the Junior League, her most cherished social club, voted to revoke her membership. The very women who had once angled for her approval now acted as if they'd never met her. Every rescinded invitation, every unanswered call was another small turn of the screw. The most devastating blow came from her own mother. At a high-profile fundraiser, the elderly Mrs. Monroe took the stage and publicly disavowed her daughter, tearfully apologizing to anyone who had been harmed by Sophia's actions. The video of her speech went viral, serving as the final irrevocable nail in Sophia's social coffin. I watched from a safe distance as her carefully constructed world crumbled. Her polished veneer began to literally crack. Without access to her usual funds, her expensive beauty regimen collapsed. The creeping gray at her roots and the fraying seams of her designer clothes told a story of rapid decline. Her lowest point occurred at a mutual friend's wedding, an invitation she'd managed to secure through some long-forgotten connection. After one too many glasses of free champagne, she made a scene, loudly accusing other guests of abandoning her. She was escorted out by security, sobbing about loyalty and friendship, words that had surely turned to ash in her mouth. Julian, already mired in his own professional disgrace, finally severed all ties. Their grand love story, the one that had cost me my marriage, didn't end with a passionate farewell, but with a sterile legal filing. He took out a restraining order after she showed up at his new, modest apartment and caused yet another public disturbance. "You've ruined me," she texted me late one night, the message a mess of typos. Are you happy now? I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer to be added to the growing file on her erratic behavior. Every desperate act only strengthened my legal position against her. The society pages that once celebrated her business acumen now ran headlines like local socialite's shocking fall from grace and former real estate tycoon faces fraud investigations. The descent was as swift as it was brutal. Her final public sighting was almost mundane. She was sitting alone at a small cafe where we'd once had weekly brunches. Her designer handbag was an obvious fake. Her nails were chipped, and she was staring into a cup of cold coffee she likely couldn't afford to refresh. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment as I walked past with my new circle of friends. I gave no sign of recognition. She had become the one thing she'd always feared most: insignificant. That evening, as I sat in my new penthouse, her old penthouse, I got a call from my sister. "Chloe, isn't it enough? She has nothing left." I watched the city lights twinkle from the same floor-to-ceiling windows where Sophia had once plotted my humiliation. "No, Mia," I replied calmly. "She's only lost the things people could see. There's so much more to take." The call ended with my sister's anxious sigh, but I felt no shred of remorse. Sophia had, after all, taught me a crucial lesson about friendship. Some things are better off being completely demolished. The news of Sophia's complete social banishment spread through our former circles like a contagion, infecting every connection she and Julian had ever made. People were forced to take a side, and in the interest of self-preservation, the choice was always easy. The couple that had once held court as society's darlings couldn't even get a table at a decent restaurant. My sister Mia's early sympathy for them evaporated as the full extent of their deeds came to light. "I just can't get over the charity money," she confessed over dinner at my new penthouse. "All those kids' programs? How could she?" I just nodded, letting the sheer weight of the truth do its job. The beauty of a well-placed fact is that it creates its own tidal wave. Julian's family, especially his younger brother, faced their own social reckoning. At a board meeting for a nonprofit, I watched the brother squirm as he was questioned about his knowledge of Julian's financial misdeeds. His fumbled denials and evasive answers cost him his seat on the board, a domino I hadn't even intended to push. The ripples of their disgrace touched every shore of our shared world. The exclusive country club where Julian and I had spent so many weekends quietly terminated his membership. Sophia's coveted positions on 3 different charitable boards were rescinded overnight. Even their favorite maitre d's suddenly had no record of their reservations. "You have to admire the sheer thoroughness of it all," remarked David, a new colleague at the firm that had snapped me up after Julian's departure. "It's like watching a masterclass in controlled demolition." "And you are?" I just smiled into my wine glass, privately savoring the irony that my own professional standing had only soared in the wake of their scandal. Their families were hit with collateral damage I hadn't even foreseen. Julian's parents, once respected figures in the community, found their own calendars suspiciously empty. His mother's bridge group was suddenly full. His father's golf buddies were always busy. The stain of association was proving to be remarkably potent. Real estate agents who had once vied for Sophia's listings now screened her calls. Their names became cautionary tales whispered in boardrooms. Even their personal staff abandoned ship. Their longtime housekeeper, Maria, now worked for me, and she had brought with her an encyclopedic knowledge of their habits. "Miss Chloe," she confided one morning as she served my coffee, "they were planning it for months. The secret phone calls, the late-night meetings." I should have said something. "It's all right, Maria," I assured her, enjoying my coffee from what used to be Sophia's favorite porcelain cup. "Everything has unfolded exactly as it was meant to." The most delicious twist was watching their former sycophants scramble to declare their allegiance to me. People who had snickered at my birthday party now rushed to share anecdotes of Julian and Sophia's bad behavior. Each tidbit was carefully logged and filed away, ammunition for a day I might need it. Their favorite vacation spots became hostile territory. The manager of the luxury resort in Bali, where they likely first consummated their affair, personally called to guarantee me that they would never be welcome on the property again. I booked the presidential suite for New Year's just because I could. Julian's great aunt, the family matriarch, who had once declared Sophia a breath of fresh air, now only referred to them as those dreadful people in hushed, disapproving tones. At her annual garden party, their faces were conspicuously absent from the family photo display. The local media, sensing the sea change, began digging up old dirt. Journalists who had once written fawning profiles of the power couple now penned thinly veiled hit pieces. The Fall of Society's golden pair ran as a 3-part series, with each installment more damning than the last. Their joint holiday card list, which Sophia had once boasted exceeded 300 names, had shrunk to a few desperate emails that were mostly sent straight to spam. Holiday parties they had once reigned over now thrived in their absence, their names a glaring omission from every guest list. I observed it all from my new vantage point, orchestrating some events, simply appreciating others. The social avalanche I had started now had a life of its own, burying them deeper than I ever could have alone. Their final, pathetic attempts to cling to their old life only underscored their profound isolation. As the year drew to a close, I hosted my own holiday party in the penthouse. The guest list was a who's who of the city. Everyone who mattered was there, except, of course, for them. Standing by the expansive windows, greeting the very guests who had once witnessed my lowest moment, I felt a deep, profound sense of order restored. "You've changed," Mia observed, joining me by the window. "Sometimes I hardly recognize you." I smiled, watching the city lights glitter below. "No, honey. I've just finally become myself. They just helped me get here." The party buzzed around us, full of life and laughter, while somewhere in the cold city, 2 people who had thought themselves invincible were spending another night alone with nothing but their regrets for company. As January's cold winds whipped around my penthouse, my meticulously laid plans reached their final brutal climax. Julian's last-ditch effort to keep his legal career alive with a small private practice had failed spectacularly. His one remaining client, a desperate developer, received an anonymous package of documents detailing Julian's past ethical breaches just moments before signing a multi-million-dollar deal. Sophia's fate was even more grim. The SEC's investigation into her real estate ventures had snowballed into federal charges of tax evasion and wire fraud. Her last remaining assets were frozen, leaving her to face the brutal winter without her luxury SUV or her platinum credit cards. Their relationship, once paraded as a love for the ages, had devolved into a series of ugly, public screaming matches. A bystander's video of them arguing outside their former favorite bistro went viral. "He promised he'd protect me." Sophia's mascara-streaked face shrieked into 1,000 phone screens. "He said we'd handle it all together, but look at us." Julian's cold retort, "You're on your own," became an instant meme. The financial world they had both taken for granted collapsed like a house of cards in a gale. Julian's investment portfolio, which had been poorly managed and over-leveraged, was wiped out by a series of margin calls. Sophia's properties, already tainted by scandal, became toxic assets no one would touch. Their desperate attempts to salvage anything only made things worse. Julian's ill-advised interview with a local blog, meant to clear his name, instead became a rambling confession that implicated Sophia in several of his schemes. In retaliation, she leaked a series of emails to the same blog, exposing his role in a scheme to defraud clients at his old firm. "Did you see?" Mia texted me one morning. "They're selling everything. Sophia's engagement ring is on an online auction site." I smiled, remembering how she'd flashed that ostentatious rock in my face at my birthday party. Now it was just another item in a liquidation sale. The perfect storm I had engineered didn't just strip them of their wealth, it stripped them of their identities. Julian, once the pinnacle of legal prowess, couldn't get a job as a paralegal. Sophia, the ultimate social connector, was now blocked on every platform that mattered. Their final joint appearance was at a court-ordered mediation. It was a portrait of utter devastation. Julian's tailored suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting, off-the-rack garment. Sophia's designer chic had given way to last season's clearance rack. They sat at opposite ends of a long table, their gazes fixed on the wall. "You ruined us," Sophia hissed, her carefully constructed mask finally shattering. "If you hadn't insisted on that ridiculous public announcement—" "Me?" Julian's laugh was a hollow, broken sound. "You're the one who wanted to humiliate her." "Let's do it at her birthday party," you said. "It'll be perfect." How perfect does this feel now, Sophia? The mediator's summary, which mysteriously found its way to my inbox, detailed their total financial ruin. Every shared asset, every joint account, every last vestige of their affair had been sold off to satisfy a mountain of debts and legal judgments. The mighty had not just fallen, they had been utterly obliterated. Sophia's final act of desperation, a tell-all blog post, backfired spectacularly. Her narrative, intended to cast herself as a tragic victim, only revealed more damning details of their shared misconduct. The comments section became a feeding frenzy of former friends and associates, all eager to share their own stories of being wronged by the pair. Julian, facing disbarment and bankruptcy, moved into a dingy studio apartment in a part of town he once wouldn't have driven through. His collection of luxury watches, his sports car, even his golf clubs were all sold off to keep the lights on. The storm reached its peak during the annual Winter Charity Gala, an event they had once co-chaired. Their absence was noted not with sadness, but with the casual chatter of their downfall, discussed with the same detached interest as the stock market. They were no longer people. They were a cautionary tale. I attended that gala wearing the sapphire necklace I dropped on the tablecloth at my birthday party. It had been retrieved, cleaned, and now served as a symbol of my victory. The very same people who had witnessed my public shaming now clamored for my attention, desperate to prove they were on the right side of history. That evening, as I sipped champagne and accepted condolences that felt more like congratulations, my phone buzzed. A notification. Julian had been spotted moving his few remaining boxes into a cheap motel on the highway. Sophia, according to a reliable source, had been reduced to couch surfing. The perfect storm had passed, leaving nothing but wreckage. And I, standing in the calm eye of the hurricane I had created, felt the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. They had tried to write me out of my own life. Instead, I had become the author of their complete and utter destruction. The knock on my penthouse door came at exactly 11:47 p.m., precisely 1 month after the gala. On the security monitor, I watched Julian fidget in the hallway. His designer suit was gone, replaced by a wrinkled jacket from a department store, and his once manicured stubble was now a ragged, unkempt beard. I made him wait for exactly 5 minutes, 1 minute for each year he and Sophia had been carrying on their affair behind my back. When I finally swung the door open, the man standing there was a hollowed-out version of the person who had tried to humiliate me. "Chloe," he rasped, his voice thin and shaky. I need to talk to you." I leaned against the doorframe, my eyes cataloging every detail of his decay. The dark rings under his eyes, the slight tremble in his hands, the worn-out shoes. Each imperfection was a small trophy. "Well, this is a surprise," I said, my voice cool and even. "Shouldn't you be with Sophia?" I heard she was having some trouble finding a permanent address. "Sophia's gone," he said, the words spilling out in a rush. "She left the country yesterday. Singapore, I think. Some relative offered her a new start." He let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Didn't even say goodbye." How heartbreaking, I replied, my voice dripping with false sympathy. True love's great romance ending so abruptly. Please do come in. I imagine you still know your way around. You did help choose most of this furniture, after all. He shuffled into what was once his living room, his eyes darting around the space as if he were a trapped animal. I had redecorated completely, erasing every single trace of our life together. Only the view of the city lights remained the same. I know it was you, he blurted out, slumping into a leather armchair. All of it. The audit, the leaked documents, the social isolation. You engineered everything. I poured myself a glass of wine, the same vintage we'd served at our wedding. Did you really come all this way just to state the obvious, Julian? That's not very astute for a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer anymore, he whispered, the words seeming to cause him physical pain. Thanks to you, I'm nothing. No career, no money, no future, even Sophia. He trailed off, burying his face in his hands. Ah, yes, Sophia, I said, savoring her name. Your great love. The woman you destroyed our marriage for. Tell me, Julian, was it worth it? All those stolen weekends, those secret texts, that grand romantic gesture at my birthday party, did it live up to your expectations? His composure finally broke. You've ruined us both. Isn't that enough? What more could you possibly want? I set my wine glass down with deliberate care. Want? Oh, Julian, you still don't get it. This was never about what I wanted. This was about what you deserved. You and Sophia needed to understand that choices have consequences. Think of it as a very expensive education. We made a mistake, he pleaded, his voice cracking as tears welled in his eyes. We never meant to hurt you this badly. We fell in love. The laugh that escaped me was sharp and genuine. Love? No, my dear. What you and Sophia had was convenience, wrapped in selfishness and spiced with the cheap thrill of betrayal. Real love doesn't require a public announcement. Real love doesn't humiliate the people in its way. He lurched to his feet, a flicker of his old anger surfacing. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching us suffer. It's all just some sick game to you. A game? I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a near whisper. No, Julian. This is justice. You and Sophia chose to make a spectacle of my pain. I simply returned the favor on a much grander scale. I'm sorry, he choked out, collapsing back into the chair. God, Chloe, I'm so sorry. Please, isn't there anything I can do? Anything to make this right? I studied him for a long, silent moment, taking in the full tableau of his defeat, the mighty Julian reduced to a weeping mess in his former home. There is nothing you can do, I said finally, my voice flat and final, and nothing you can say. This is exactly what I promised you that night. Regret. Pure, complete, all-consuming regret. Chloe, please. Goodbye, Julian. I cut him off, moving toward the door. I trust you can see yourself out. You were always so good at making an exit. As the door clicked shut behind him, I went back to my wine and the city lights. Somewhere in Singapore, Sophia was likely discovering that her cousin's help came with conditions I had carefully arranged. And here was Julian, utterly broken and alone, finally grasping the true cost of his choices. My phone buzzed, a text from Mia. Is it over? Are you satisfied now? I smiled, typing back my reply. Almost. There's just one more scene to write, because while Julian's surrender might have been the end for him, it was merely another step in my perfectly choreographed performance. After all, some lessons need to be truly unforgettable. After Julian's late-night visit, I found myself standing in the silent penthouse, staring at the empty chair where he'd sat. The victory I had engineered was absolute. Julian was broken, Sophia was in exile, and their great love story had become a local cautionary tale. but an unplanned emotion lingered in the quiet room: emptiness. My phone lit up. A message from my private investigator in Singapore. Sophia's fresh start was unfolding just as I'd arranged. Her cousin's offer of help was, in fact, a position as a glorified administrative assistant in his shipping company, a far cry from her days as a real estate magnate. The attached photos showed her in a drab uniform, sorting mail in a windowless office. I poured another glass of wine and went out to the balcony, the very spot where Julian and Sophia had likely plotted my demise. A year had passed since my birthday party, a year of cold calculation and precise strategic strikes, each one designed to dismantle their lives. Mia visited the next morning, her face a canvas of concern. "I saw Julian yesterday," she said, taking the coffee I handed her. "He's working as a paralegal in some strip mall law office. He looks shattered. Isn't that what I wanted?" I mused, more to myself than to her. "Is it?" she asked, studying my face. "You won, Chloe. Completely. They lost everything. But looking at you, what did you gain?" The question hung in the air. What had I gained? Professional accolades, certainly. A higher social standing, undeniably. The penthouse, their former friends, their possessions. All were now mine. Yet sitting there with my sister, I felt a hollow space where the satisfaction was supposed to be. That night, I stumbled upon an old photo album while cleaning out a closet. Pictures of Julian and me in our early happy years. Photos of Sophia and me. Our smiles genuine. Our friendship real. Before the lies. Before the revenge. Before it all went so wrong. I traced the outlines of our younger faces, remembering the blind trust I once had, the love I thought was real. "Was it worth it?" my father asked during our weekly dinner. "All that energy, all that time just to tear them down." I thought of Julian's tears and Sophia's exile. "They got what they deserved," I replied, but the words tasted different in my mouth. A week later, a letter arrived from Singapore. Sophia's once confident script was shaky. She wrote of regret, loneliness, and of finally understanding the price of her actions. I expected to feel a surge of triumph as I read her words. Instead, I just felt tired. Julian's final attempt to reach me came through a mutual friend. He'd started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people who couldn't afford a lawyer. "He's trying to find some kind of redemption," our friend said. "He says you taught him the hardest lesson of his life." I spent a long night on my balcony, reflecting. The meticulous plans, the flawless execution, the bittersweet taste of victory. It had been my entire world for a year. I had become a master of destruction. But what had it cost my own soul? Mia found me there in the morning. "You know what's funny?" she said, leaning on the railing beside me. "In the process of destroying them, you completely reinvented yourself. The only question is, do you like the person you've become?" The truth of her words hit me. In my quest for perfect revenge, I had been fundamentally altered. The woman who was publicly shamed was gone, replaced by someone harder, more powerful, yes, but also someone who had spent a year focused only on destruction, not creation. I picked up my phone and looked at the last text I'd ever received from Julian. "I hope you find peace someday." I know now I destroyed something beautiful, not just in our marriage, but in you. The sun was rising, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. My revenge was complete. They had paid for their betrayal, and yet I felt no joy. I felt ready to close the book. They would live with the consequences of their choices, and I would live with mine. "So," Mia asked softly, "what now?" I smiled. A real smile, not the cold, sharp one I had perfected. "Now," I said, "I think it's time to write a new story. One that has nothing to do with them." The sweet taste of victory I had fantasized about was something else entirely. It wasn't hollow, but it was transformative in ways I never expected. I had won, but the battle had changed me as much as the betrayal itself. It was time to find out who I could be when revenge was no longer my fuel. After all, the greatest revenge might just be living an extraordinary life without them ever crossing my mind again. 2 months after that final reflection, I was sitting across from David Anderson, a venture capitalist who had been watching my strategic demolition of Julian and Sophia's world with a keen professional eye. "Your execution was flawless," he said, sliding a business proposal across the table. "That kind of strategic mind, that level of detail. Imagine what you could do, building things up instead of tearing them down." The opportunity was to revitalize struggling businesses. My experience in corporate law, combined with what David called my uncommon grasp of human psychology, made me the ideal candidate. I accepted. That same day, I donated the last of Sophia's designer clothes to a women's charity. It felt right, shedding the final remnants of my revenge as I stepped into a new purpose. Mia saw the change in me almost instantly. "The light is back in your eyes," she said over brunch. "You're not just surviving anymore. You're living." My first project was salvaging a family-owned real estate firm. The irony of saving a real estate company wasn't lost on me, but the satisfaction of watching it flourish under my guidance was a feeling I hadn't known I was missing. Snippets of news about Julian and Sophia still found their way to me. He had found a quiet purpose in his pro bono work. She had adapted to her life in Singapore, teaching English to executives, a strange, but perhaps better, use of her communication skills. I sold the penthouse 6 months after starting my new job. Its memories, both good and bad, belonged to a past I was finished with. My new apartment, which overlooked a quiet park, reflected the peace I was beginning to find. Romance found me when I wasn't looking for it. Alexander, a widowed professor I met at a fundraiser, approached life with a gentle consideration that felt like a balm. Our connection grew slowly, built on honest conversations, not on social appearances. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he told me one evening. "There's a strength in you, like you've walked through fire and come out whole on the other side." He was right. The flames of betrayal had forged something new. Not the cold, calculating woman of my revenge plot, but someone who understood the value of transformation. My professional life thrived. The very skills I had used to dismantle Julian and Sophia's empire were proving invaluable in identifying weaknesses and building opportunities for others. Each success felt like another step away from the woman who had stood humiliated at her own birthday party. A year and a half after that night, 2 letters arrived. The first was from Julian, a formal written apology, along with documents showing he had established a small trust to help victims of financial fraud. The second was from Sophia. It contained a single sentence: "You won. But maybe we all had to lose to find our way." I filed them both away without a reply. Their lives, their words, their choices, they were no longer part of my story. Mia joined me for dinner on the 2nd anniversary of that fateful birthday. "Would you do it all again?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I thought about it carefully. "The revenge served its purpose," I said. "It taught them a lesson, yes. But it taught me something more important, my own strength. And now, I choose to use that strength to build." My latest project was a venture fund dedicated to creating opportunities for women rebuilding their lives after devastating personal setbacks. The inspiration was rooted in my own story, but it had grown into something far bigger than myself. "You've become quite the phoenix," Alexander remarked one evening as I shared my plans, rising from the ashes to create something new. Looking out over the park, watching families play in the setting sun, I felt the last traces of bitterness finally dissolve. Julian and Sophia's betrayal had ignited a transformation they could never have intended. It had created not just the avenger who orchestrated their downfall, but this final version of me, someone who could nurture, build, and grow. The woman who had promised, "You'll regret this," had kept her word. But the woman who emerged had discovered something far more precious than revenge. She had found her true power, not in destruction, but in creation. The phoenix had indeed risen, but she was now soaring toward a horizon her betrayers could never even imagine, leaving the ashes of the past exactly where they belonged, behind her. End of story.